Hello, everyone. This is Brett, and thank you for tuning in to a brand new album ranking video. I am here with Greg and Frank. Um, if you've missed some of our previous rankings, we've covered Dead Can Dance, Cocteau Twins, the year 1988. Am I missing any?
Smashing
Frank and
Pumpkins.
what's that?
Smashing Pumpkins.
Smashing Pumpkins. I know Frank and I did the Smiths and Psychedelic Furs as well. So we'll leave links to that in the description. So today we're talking about Bauhaus. We're going to be ranking their 5 studio albums along with our favorite 5 non-album tracks. Before we get to that, I'd like to introduce everyone. Starting off there in the Bauhaus t-shirt, in front of that wall of greatness there is Mr. Greg Fasolino. Greg has written for Creem Magazine, Fangoria, Trouser Press, Reflex, Guitar for the Practicing Musician, a former member of the band The Bell Hollow, also a member of Naked and the Dead, who's recently got some airplay on that Sirius XM Slicing Up Eyeballs show, or the Darkwave one, right?
Yep.
Also a member of the band The Harrow. Greg is a music archivist. Check out his YouTube channel where he has loads of concerts, rare recordings, and interviews. And Greg also wrote the liner notes for Peter Murphy's kind of best of compilation, Wild Birds. Thank you for being here once again, Greg.
Glad to be back.
Over in the Tones on Tail t-shirt is Mr. Frank Deserto. Frank writes the Systems of Romance music blog. I highly recommend you guys check that out. He's a writer for postpunk.com, also a member of the band The Harrow, and he is the curator of the upcoming Cherry Reds compilation, No Songs Tomorrow, a dark wave journey, which comes out later in 2024. And if you're new to my channel, my name is Brett. I've been doing this Life on This Planet blog here on YouTube since about 2012, founding member of the band Audra, former member of Black Tape for Blue Girl, member of Unto Ashes. I'm a music teacher, etc. So thank you guys for being here and checking this out. Let's start off with just a brief history of the band Bauhaus. I assume a lot of people watching this are already familiar with the band, but there are some that possibly aren't. So Peter Murphy, Daniel Ash, David J., Kevin Haskins formed Bauhaus in 1978 in Northampton, England. In their original run, which lasted until 1983, they released 4 studio albums as well as 1 live album. The band reunited in 1998 for a reunion tour, then once again in 2005, later producing an album of new material in 2008. There have been a couple more reunions since. All 4 members have had long solo careers, other projects, Love and Rockets, Tones on Tail, Dolly's Car, etc. Musically speaking, which we will definitely dive into, they've been labeled as kind of the godfathers of Gothic rock, but Bauhaus were kind of all over the place, a mixture of glam, funk, art rock, reggae, dub, post-punk. So before we get started into the actual ranking, we're going to start as usual with a round of trivia questions related to Bauhaus. So let's just start off here in alphabetical order with Frank. All right. So 2 points if you get it correct. If you miss it, it goes over to the next person who can get it correct for 1 point. And the winner will get to choose whether they want to go first in the ranking or whichever they choose. So Frank, here we go. Before shortening their name to Bauhaus, Peter Murphy, Daniel Ash, David J., Kevin Haskins went by this name up until the release of their debut single.
Bauhaus 1919.
That is 2 points for Frank. Over to Greg.
All right.
All right, this is a good one. Whether they were on one of the studio albums, official live albums, compilations, music video, concert films, or singles, Bauhaus released around a dozen or so cover songs. Name 7 of the artists that they covered.
David Bowie. Nico. No, I'm sorry. Velvet Underground. T-Rex. John Cale. What's their name? The Strangeloves. And Norman Greenbaum. That's 6, right? You said 6. So yeah.
7. We need one more.
One more. Okay. Oh, geez. Fasolino.
You got it, man. Woo! Excellent. Just a couple others from the live Gotham video, Iggy Pop. They covered The Passenger. Also, Dead Can Dance with the cover of Severance. And the Peter Ivers David Lynch song, In Heaven. I don't know if this is
In Heaven.
technically considered an official release.
Is that the, yes, I had that in
Yes, the rest,
college. Yeah.
the rest in peace one, the final concert of the
gonna-
original run.
In Heaven crossed my mind.
All right, so we got 2 points there, Greg. Good work. All right, back over to you, Frank. After being a band for a little over a month, Bauhaus entered the studio and then released their debut single, Bela Lugosi's Dead, on Small Wonder Records in 1979. Shortly after, they released 3 singles and 1 studio album on 4AD before heading for the parent label, Beggar's Banquet. Name those 4 releases on 4AD.
Okay, the first one is Dark Entries, which is originally on the Axis label, which then switched to 4AD halfway through the promotion for that single. So you have Dark Entries, you have the album In the Flat Field, you have the cover, the Telegram Sam single, and the Terror Couple Kill Colonel 7-inch.
All right.
And all of which were compiled on the Bauhaus 4AD EP behind Greg there and behind Brett.
Yeah, we all got it up. All right, 2 points for Frank. All right, man, this is a tough one. All right, so you guys are good on your Bauhaus trivia. All right, back over to you, Greg. All right, this incredibly rare Bauhaus artifact is a 7-inch single released to fan club members. Look at these guys already shaking their heads. They already know it. So for you guys watching, released to fan club members who had already paid their dues prior to the band breaking up in 1983. This single was limited to around 325 copies and is a holy grail for the Bauhaus collector. Name the A-side and the B-side.
The A-side is The Sanity Assassin, and the B-side is the cover of Spirit in the Sky.
Right on. Do either of you have it?
I don't have it. I think I used to, and I don't have it at the moment. Do you have it, Frank?
That is $500 worth of record I will probably never own.
All right, so we're tied up here. So the bonus question, it'll be just whoever raises their hand first on this one and gets it correct. Okay, speaking of Bela Lugosi's Dead, clocking in at 9 minutes and 36 seconds, Bela is widely seen as ground zero for the goth rock movement. Named after the famous actor who portrayed Count Dracula in the classic 1931 film, the role of Count Dracula has been filled by countless actors over the last 100 years. This actor won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor, a Golden Globe, and a Screen Actors Guild for his portrayal of Bela Lugosi in the later years of his life in this mid-90s gem. Greg.
Martin Landau.
Yeah, Martin Landau.
You got it. All right.
Ed Wood. Nice.
All right. Excellent.
That's a
Excellent.
split second, by the way. Split second.
Yes, it was very, very, very split. So excellent, Greg. So you will choose whether to go whatever order you want to go in. And just a couple other things before we start. Each of us, as usual, is writing down our pick, guessing each person's #1 album, which we'll reveal right before the #1 is shown. Also, we're each going to be mentioning 3 songs, our favorite songs from these releases, as well as the non-albums. We will have 3 separate playlists for each of us, and I think that is it. And then we'll say our songs in descending order: our 3rd favorite, our 2nd favorite, and our absolute favorite from that album. So Greg, it is over to you. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first this time. Why not? Usually I always punt it, but I think this time I'll try going first.
All right, #5.
All right, #5 for me, I don't have a copy, is the band's reunion album, Go Away White, from 2008. I was kind of unimpressed with it at the time that it came out. I was kind of actually surprised how unengaged I was by it at the time, but listening to it again, it's a lot better than I remember. It's not really, to me, on the same playing field as the original 4 albums, but I do like quite a bit of it. I think Peter's voice sounds great. It was interesting to hear how he sounds with a more Love and Rockets-ish backing vocals, which wasn't really on the earlier albums, and the fuzzy kind of bass riffing that they do a lot in the later bands. I thought that was kind of interesting. I really respect that they tried to do something more fresh and impulsive, but I think, that's keeping in the Bauhaus tradition, but I'm not sure if their chemistry was 100% at the time, and the quality of the songwriting is kind of spotty to me. The album cover also, I always found their art very resonant and really kind of complemented the music so well. And I felt, maybe the album cover was a little boring compared to their earlier ones, but it's still, a good album. But to me, it just doesn't land with the first four. And as far as the three songs I would pick, number three would be, I'm going to try to pronounce this, Zakir, kind of nice track. Number two, Adrenaline. I really like the buzzing kind of Bowie-ish drive of that song. And my number one track on the album would be The Mirror Remains, which has a real good smoldering groove and some really nice wild Daniel Ash guitar playing. So yeah, number five will go Way White.
Nice. All right, over to you, Frank, number five.
All right, number five for me is also Go Away White, which I can't believe appears. The webcam, I just thought it'd be, here we go, here it is, Go Away White. And I kind of echo everything as Greg said to me. To me, it sounds like a Love and Rockets album, or even then a Beatles album. Like that first track, the opening track sounds like Drive My Car to me. It's like the boom, 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 like very sprightly Paul McCartney bass playing, which doesn't really belong in Bauhaus land to me. It seems it's very positive of a record, despite all their turmoil. The first half of it really does just sound like Love and Rockets, a little bouncy, a little rock and roll, a little butt rock, if you will, But I do like some of the dirty bass. As a dirty bass player who likes to run it through a distortion pedal, that's a nice touch. I do like how Undone reminds me a lot of Breaking Glass from Low, Bowie. It has that same like drum crack to it, like boom, sort of like whip thing to it. But yeah, but I like that it gets weirder as it goes along too. There are moments, but my favorite moments that feel more Bauhausy to me is as the album goes on, about the halfway point, there's some certain moments. And with that in mind, my third favorite track is actually Dogs of Vapor, which comes back around from Heavy Metal 2000, a track they recorded around the Gotham Resurrection tour in that era before they split again, and got re-put on Go Away White, and it works for me there. It's kind of one of the best songs there, which is maybe telling to some of the songwriting that they had on the other ones. That's still one of the stronger tracks. Second for me is also Adrenaline, which I really did enjoy hearing live on the 2006 tour of Nine Inch Nails. And my first favorite is Mirror Remains, which kind of comes out of nowhere to me. I think it saved the track before, it kind of meanders, then it ends, and then all of a sudden Mirror Remains just jumps in and kind of just grabs you and just demands, like, I'm Peter Murphy, listen to me, and here I am. And it's a really interesting track. And I agree with the Daniel Ash playing on that one. So there you have it. Number five, Go Away White, 2008.
All right. So, preparing for this video, I think there was a clear number five on this one for me. And it's the hat trick here. Go Away White. 2008, the fifth album. It was their first in 25 years. When I think of this album, I think of David J's bass playing. I think he's really the star of this album. It's so bass heavy. You guys both mentioned Mirror Remains, and I'm happy to hear you both regard it so highly, because that song always has been a total favorite. The kind of vocal interplay that's going on in the background between Peter Murphy and Daniel Ash, where you hear Peter coughing, and there's like lots of like dissonance. It's loose, it's experimental, and there's that moment where the solo break happens, and Daniel Ash is doing this like waka waka, just kind of these muted scratches, and you hear Peter say, "This is the solo," or like, "Here's the solo." And Daniel Ash goes, "This is the solo." And then Peter Murphy says something like, "Oh, it's good." And it's just kind of I love that kind of like background chatter that's actually that they left on there. I think it's just kind of really, really funny. But the piano flourishes kind of remind me of like Aladdin Sane at the end, Bowie. Endless Summer of the Damned, like, There's this moment 3/4 of the way through it where the song should have, it sounds like it should, it's an ending, but then they come back in and you get this like, endless summer. And I mean, that part right there always just kind of, I always just, could we have faded that part out there? I just not feeling it. The track Saved is probably one of the kind of weaker moments on there as well. It feels like an outtake from Peter Murphy's Dust album to me, and it's kind of a low point. But the high points on this one, Undone, which you guys have both mentioned, is my third favorite. I'm gonna go with my second favorite, The Mirror Remains, because I think that's such a great one. And the first one is Adrenaline. Like, I just think that's just, the title is perfect for it. It's just a really engaging track. But overall, Go Away White is my number 5 pick.
Cool to see it on vinyl. That's an expensive one now too.
Yeah, I think I got that for $17 if memory serves me correctly. So
I'll give you 14 for it.
all right. Number 4, Greg.
Okay, number 4 for me, which is kind of an easy pick, actually. I was surprised. Is 1982's "The Sky's Gone Out," their third album, which I don't have a copy of at the moment. It's a great album, but it always felt to me, even back then, as the least of the OG 4. It has this bit of a sort of gray, ponderous vibe to it that makes it harder for me to listen to it all in one sitting than the others. Like I feel like it's in parts it's fantastic, but as a whole, I find it a little tiny bit more of a slog to listen to than the others. So that's kind of why I ranked it a little lower. I do like that they kind of do some interesting different things on this. They kind of go into like a prog thing with the 3-part, 3 shadows, and almost like a little metal within the night. I think the one thing about this, we talked before we started filming about how like some of the albums were ranked maybe a little lower for us because of one particular song or several songs that were just not up to snuff for us personally. And I feel like that's what hurt this album for me. Is I really have always disliked the album version of Spirit, which is one of my favorite Bauhaus songs, and I feel like the version they put on the album is vastly inferior to the single version. That lovely drum arrangement is just turned into this kind of a dirge, and that always killed the album's momentum for me. I feel like, why didn't you just put the amazing single version on and leave this kind of weirdo version as a B-side or something, or a remix or something? I just never vibed with it, and I think that kind of hurts the album a little bit for me. But as far as 3 songs, number 3 is "All We Ever Wanted Was Everything," which is this lovely, sad Bowie-esque song that could have fit on Hunky Dory, I think. Number 2 is "Third Uncle," which is might be their best cover. It's just a great way to kick off the album, and I think it actually transcends the Eno original. I think it might be their only cover that I think is, just to me, head and shoulders even above the original, which is not to diss Eno. And number 1 is my favorite song in it is "Silent Hedges," which is this elegant, silky, beautiful track. I really like how I think this song was like the debut maybe of the traditional, like, iconic Daniel Ash 12-string guitar sound, or maybe Passion of Lovers a little bit, but this one, it was like really front and center, and I always love when he does that after this. And my favorite part is when the distorted bass comes in. Frank, you were saying you love that kind of bass, and I think that's one of David J's best bass moments. So number 4, "Sky's Gone Out."
Right.
Okay.
Over to you, Frank. Number 4.
Number 4 for me is also "The Sky's Gone Out." I have this bizarre copy that came out on Polygram that has pretty much the Terror Couple Kill Colonel minimal artwork. It doesn't have the giant Daniel Ash eyeball, which I think is one of his greatest covers that he's done. But mine also has not only the album, but the Ziggy Stardust single. Ziggy Stardust, Lagotija Nick, and one of the 17 versions of Kick in the Eye as a bonus single. So it's cool. That's kind of how I have my Ziggy fix on here. And you know what's funny about this? Going into this was my favorite of their albums for the longest time. I loved it. I thought it was head and shoulders my favorite. And when I listened to this, it just didn't, same as Greg is saying, didn't do it for me in the way that I kind of wanted. Something, yeah, the Spirit version doesn't fit me. Spirit's never been my favorite song anyway, but especially would agree on this version. The Three Shadows I used to think were really cool and interesting, but then in the end they were like, they are proggy in a way that's not to their liking. But anyway, the great songs on here though has some of my favorite Bauhaus moments. So I find it to be. I did want to say something about the Third Uncle cover. It's not on my three favorites, but it is. I agree, their best cover. I actually think that maybe all of their cover versions are good as or better than the originals. And this is coming as a massive Bowie fan, a massive, there's the Black Star, like between loving or T-Rex even. I actually think Telegram Sam, and we'll get to that another later maybe, is better than, in my opinion. So their cover versions, Third Uncle, is such a great way to rip this album off. Like kick it off, like so incisive, so powerful. Like it's like on adrenaline, if you will. But anyway, so my three favorite tracks. Number 3 is In the Night. Greg, I never thought of it as metal before, but like I can totally hear that now. Like I'll never think of it the same way. My second favorite is the Hunky Dory B-side, All We Ever Wanted Was Everything. Beautiful, beautiful song. The way he just the way he kind of pulling that mic and he's kind of screaming that all, and it's like it's coming down from the heavens. I love it. And then my favorite track on here, and one of my favorite Bauhaus songs ever, is Swing the Heartache. It's such a weird, broken, noisy, clangy song that immediately stopped me in my tracks when I first heard it back in college. And I was very glad to hear on the set list for the 2005 tour. We talked earlier about how that tour was not the best in the world, but hearing Swing the Heartache was a highlight from that. Anyway, number 4, 1982, Sky's Gone Out. It's old as that.
All right, nice pick. All right, I'm gonna mess up the second hat trick right here. I want to second what Greg said there. Then we had talked about this prior to the video. Is that this was very tough. These 4, the original 4, and largely I gauged this ranking exactly on the weaker moments is what brought them down. So I am probably going to regret this, but as of today, In the Flat Field in at number 4. All right.
We'll talk in a minute.
I mean, all it does is just, and so many of these songs, like, that I've been listening to for 35 years or whatever it is, it's like, I know them so well, so I've accepted them. But going through it super critically over the last week, just looking at the title, when you see Small Talk Stinks on the jacket, you're in for something that's going to be slightly off. So Small Talk Stinks, as much as I kind of like it and its little quirkiness, it's after decades of hearing it, it just perhaps should have been left off. The highlight of the track is Daniel Ash's guitar tone. I love the sound of it. And as much as I like this song, I think Dive is still another weak moment on the album. Yes, Greg. But the rest of it is really where it's at for me. I mean, the hypnotic Spy in the Cab, it's just empty of bass for almost 2 minutes, and then the bass just kind of comes in. It's a fascinating, with that descending fill, it's a fascinating track. Double Dare, I mean, for an opening track, totally menacing, fuzzed out bass, fantastic. It's a super unique debut album. Nothing else sounded like it, in my opinion. So yeah, I love this album, but something's got to be in this spot for me. And as of today, that's where it's at. Third favorite, Nerves. I love Nerves. I think it's just an excellent closing track. Number 2 favorite, In the Flat Field, and my number 1 favorite is Double Dare. Number 4, the 1980 debut, In the Flat Field. All right, over to you, Greg.
That's what it is.
For your number 3.
This is what it is. Number 3 for me is the original lineup's final album, Burning from the Inside, from 1983. This album was my very first Bauhaus purchase, which I bought used in 1993, just as the band was breaking up. Yes, that's when I got into them, which was frustrating. I love the album, but I feel like it's their least coherent of the original 4. And you can kind of tell that it was made under a bit of interband duress, and Peter Murphy was sick for much of the recording. So I think this album has some of their highest high points and some points that are sort of more on the low end, which is why it ranks lesser than the other two that I'm going to talk about later. There's a couple of songs on here that I actually find kind of like annoying, like Antonine Ortod, which is one of the few Bauhaus lyrics that it just doesn't, song never 100% worked for me. Like, I find the lyrics, which I'm not going to repeat, a little silly. I mean, not silly in a cool way. I'm just not as into it. But the stuff on it that I do love is absolutely amazing. And the one thing before I talk about the songs, I'll say is I think what's interesting about the album is because of Peter being sick, um, Daniel Ash and David J ended up singing a lot of the album, which if you listen to it, it kind of it's a lot of it is proto Love and Rockets. It's basically like some of the songs are Love and Rockets, but not titled as Bauhaus, and that's always I thought was kind of interesting. Number 3 song, I'm gonna pick "Who Killed Mr. Moonlight," which I think might be David J's finest composition. I love how his voice on there has this kind of almost John Lennon echo. I love the lyrics. I just think it's a pretty perfect song, and it's so different than anything else on the record or that they've done. And so I always liked it. Number 2, I'm gonna pick "Slice of Life," this really gorgeous, magical like song. And that's one of the ones that I would say is like basically like proto Love and Rockets, which you could tell because when I first saw Love and Rockets a couple of years after that on their first tour, they played it and it fit right in. And then number 1 is the song that got me into them back in 1983, which is "She's in Parties," which I think is the best bass line of David J's many classic bass lines, especially the extended dub version. Um, to me, that's might be in my top 10 bass lines of all time. That doom doo 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 doom doo 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 doom. I could listen to that forever, and especially when you have the melodica going. I'm a big dub fan, so I adore that track. So number 3, "Burning from the Inside."
Right on.
Okay.
All right, Frank.
Number 3 for me is also, well, not also. Number 3 is "In the Flat Field," 1980. What I meant by also is that I'm totally with you, Brett, in that Small Talk Stinks, Dive. I just can't. Small Talk Stinks, especially. Dive, I agree, is a nice enough song, but it's not and nowhere near as strong as the rest of the record. And those two songs kind of could have been, to me, should have been left off in favor of anything. Actually, to be honest, you could have left them off and not replaced with anything, and it would be all the better for it. I otherwise love the rest of the record, front to back. It was my first Bauhaus album outside of Gotham. I think I got Gotham because it was new, and then "In the Flat Field" was the first of the 4 I heard. I heard the 4AD expanded edition. It was confusing because Dark Entry started it, and that's not how it should be. But really, Double Dare is the queen of opening tracks of all time. Love playing that bass line, love fuzzing it out, love getting just to is formative for me in that way. I first actually think I heard Bauhaus through Night of the Demons when I was like a 9-10-year-old. So Stigmata Martyr stands out to me as a huge moment. That is my go-to track that I will play that at a DJ set when I'm going super golf. And that's what I'll play. And it's kind of my favorite for that scene of Nancy flailing around, watching Peter flail around, singing it. I'll flail around while DJing it. The whole thing, it's such a great track. But yeah, it's such a, influential record to me. Nothing really sounded like it. Maybe a little Wire, but like it was so of its time, so strong for its time. So my favorite tracks, number 3, as mentioned, also the number 3 spot, "Nerves." The way that song builds and shatters and breaks, it's intense. It's an intense track. It kind of starts like off the rails a little, kind of gets cohesion, and then just explodes, and it's just taking everybody down with it. It's perfect. Second favorite track, "Double Dare." So the opening and the closing tracks. "Double Dare," just the way it just starts with that little the little like foghorn sound with the bass and those electronic blips, and it just pummels you into oblivion. And then my first favorite track, like mentioned, "Stigmata Martyr," forever influential, forever informative. My go-to track, terrifying. I've seen it live a few times, and it's always kind of scary a moment. the way, yeah, that screaming of the, you know, of the Father, Son, the Holy Ghost, kind of, and it's a little over goth in that way, but I, you know, it hits me right where it counts. So yeah, there you have it, number 3 in the flat field.
Well said, Frank. We just watched Night of the Demons back in October for 31 Days of Horror, and that scene is so killer.
It's so
Uh,
silly. It's so silly.
All right, my number 3. The Sky's Gone Out. Bauhaus is a third album released back in 1982. Frank showed something. This was my first version of it, this CD copy, and it was like it's like a Canadian pressing. Yeah, I think it's the same one. And the track listing that's on the back is incorrect. So here is my writing from, I don't know, whatever year I got this in, well over 30 years ago. I put the correct track listing in the tray there. So this was my first exposure to this album, and it actually puts Kick in the Eye as track number 6, which is weird. Because I think I got this before Mask, and then it has Earwax on there as well, and then it tacked Ziggy and Lagertija Nick at the end. So that's how but then the writing on the disc is correct, but Swing the Heartaches with an S at the end. It was a confusing thing, but that was how I processed it. It even followed through with the S on Heartaches there. So anyways, to me, Greg, you mentioned something about it being kind of like, I don't know if you use the murky or something. I feel like this album, what's that?
It's a gray and ponderous.
Gray and ponderous, yeah. To me, this album feels crisper and more produced, because Mask to me was very kind of murky and really dark and gloomy, where this feels like maybe it was the acoustic guitar. It kind of like felt like it brightened things up. The weaker spots on this, as much as I appreciate Bauhaus's experimentation, the Exquisite Corpse has always been kind of a weak spot. And the third part of Three Shadows has never been a favorite. So those moments kind of bring this down. But I'm so used to it now, and you guys have already talked about this, but I thought it was totally interesting to open an album with a cover song. Like, just kind of just like, you know, whatever the thought process on there is, opening up with a cover song for your third album, I thought was a pretty bold move. And Frank, you already said Bauhaus as the covers, like, and I'm sure we'll be discussing them throughout the rest of the video, but phenomenal versions of songs that they chose to do. There are days when this is my favorite Bauhaus album, but third favorite. Oh, and we were talking about this before the video start, when my band Audra had opened for Peter Murphy back in 2011, I think it was. And we were shocked watching from the side of the stage that he actually opened with the instrumental, The Three Shadows Part 1, to open the set, which totally caught us off guard. But so my third favorite is The Three Shadows Part 2, you know, Oh Classic Gentleman, and that 3/4 waltz. Second favorite, Silent Hedges. I want to segue here. I feel like we've talked about this in the past, but it's always a great story. I saw Peter Murphy play at the Troubadour in Hollywood many years ago. And he had recently had a cameo in one of the Twilight vampire movies. So as he's doing his set, he said, I want to bring out a special guest here. And all of a sudden it was, God, I can't remember his name out. It was the dad from the Twilight movies, whoever the actor is. I apologize, I can't remember his name, Billy something. And he came out. Peter Murphy switched to piano, and they did, I think, My Last 2 Weeks with that guy singing. And then the dad from Twilight sang Silent Hedges with Peter Murphy's band. It was kind of wild. Probably happened once, and I happened to be there. First favorite, All We Ever Wanted Was Everything, is just a beautiful, perfect track. There it is, number 3 for me. The Sky's Gone Out. Greg, number 2.
All right, and I'm gonna hide the the naughty bits here. Number 2 for me is in the flat field from 1980, their debut. And I always find when we do these videos interesting how we can have such radically different feelings about particular albums or songs. And I like that. It's like I like hearing other people's opinions. So I think this is the one where what you guys seem pretty in tune with what you were saying about it, and I feel like my preferences on it are radically different. I love how weird and transgressive in sound this album is. I feel like this album was post-punk ground zero back in 1980. It's so unique and weird, and I love all of the sonar-like beeping sounds in it. It's just got this claustrophobic feel that I enjoy. But as far as the songs go, is where I feel a little different than you. The ones you guys picked, some of them like, I mean, I like all the songs on the albums, but like Nerves might be like maybe my least favorite.
Hmm.
Whereas I absolutely freaking love Dive. It's one of my favorite Bauhaus songs. I just love the simplicity of it and how it has that, you know, burning guitar riff that's basically in that sort of lineage of Joy Division, Interzone, and Iggy Pop 16. You know that, you know, it's just I just love how in your face that song is. I wish I could have seen them do that live back in that day. So I really love that song. I'm glad it's on the album. My second favorite is the title track, which is like I think a really influential song sonically. I feel like a lot of bands afterwards, especially in the, you know, post-punk goth vein, took a lot of inspiration from that song. The guitar sound especially. And I love the surreal kind of literary references in the lyrics. And my favorite song on the album is my favorite Bauhaus song of all time, which is God in an Alcove, which I think is just, the lyrics are so indelible and it has this serpentine groove that just never fails to like stun me. I've always loved that song. It's always been my favorite Bauhaus song since I really got into them. So I really like this album. I think it's great. I agree with you that Small Talk Stinks is probably could have been a B-side, and maybe that's why this album is the, you know, why I didn't put it number one. So there you go. Number two in the flat field.
Right on, Greg. I enjoyed
Yeah,
that.
good. Yeah. Good call on God in an Alcove too. I kind of feel like I overlooked it, and we both overlooked it. Thanks for calling attention. It's a great song. All right, so number two. This is where it gets hard because both of these I think have been number one and can be number one. But right now I'm going, even though I want to switch it so bad right now, I'm just gonna say it's Mask as number two. Okay, 1981. It still hurts to kind of like. I mean, did I take it back? No. Anyway, Mask. So for a sophomore album, I thought when I first heard it, it didn't blow me away. But it's as now I think of it as like one of the rare occasions where a sophomore album is definitely better. It just builds upon all the greatness of the first album. This one does not have any bad tracks. To me, this is front to back perfect. There's nothing, no bad moments on it. It's got a lot more funk to it in spots. Sounds like Kick in the Eye and Fear, Dancing. A lot more of that like funky kind of really almost slap in the bass kind of vibes on it. But then it also has a lot more atmosphere. The title track or Hollow Hills, like these really creepy, ponderous, claustrophobic moments that really are strong. So this is, you know, I really love hearing the saxophone all over this, all that sweet, sweet sax from Daniel Ash over this album. It's really nice hearing all the band members spread their wings a little bit more on it. I feel their playing is incredible on this. So yeah, three favorites. This is a hard one because I love every track pretty much equally. So I had, when I was listening to this, I had Passion of Lovers in here at number three, but it's not. Right now I'm going to go with the title track, Mask, which is weirdly the one they did a video for. It was a really bleak video, if I recall. They did a video for the title track. So my number three is that. Number two is Kick in the Eye, which is for me like their best single. It's such a funky jam. It always gets the dance floor shaking whenever I play it. I love seeing Nine Inch Nails play it with Peter Murphy once. Here's another version of it that lives on here. Many versions of it, all of which are great. And my first favorite track on here, Hollow Hills. It's beautiful. It just feels like an old, creeping black and white horror film. A lot of must and dread and shadow play all over that song. And it's beautiful. So, Mask, 1981. Number two, Reluctantly.
Nice.
I'm enjoying hearing you guys talk about these. It's interesting to compare notes on these albums. My number two. This was what going into this. This was my number one pick. So, you know, me now in 2024 went through this super critical reevaluation of everything. And this is, I mean, like I said, the first four are on certain days, they can kind of swap around. But right now, this was my first Bauhaus album. I first discovered Bauhaus sometime in the late 80s, going to high school and seeing someone with a Bauhaus t-shirt on, this stark, bold print. It was like a copper color and something was going on. And I found at that time the record stores that were available, Bauhaus releases were hard to find. And the most accessible one that I ended up finding a used copy, because a lot of them were imports. But the one that I found was a used copy of Burning from the Inside, because I think that one had a domestic release, and I remember finding a copy of that. So my number two pick is their fourth album, the last in that original run, released in 1983. Have the price tag on there. I paid $7 for it. A couple of the songs on this, interestingly, were written and recorded originally in that studio session back in 1979. So you get that early version of Honeymoon Croon back then. So that song had been kicking around for a while. We obviously, I think Greg was talking about it. We get glimpses of Love and Rockets here. Slice of Life, Who Killed Mr. Moonlight, that 12-string guitar. Interesting little tidbit on this one is the title track, Burning from the Inside. You know, being a big Jane's Addiction fan, Jane's Addiction used to do this song called Bauhaus, where they played the music for Burning from the Inside, the title track, while Perry sang the lyrics to Bob Dylan's Like a Rolling Stone over the top of it. And it's on some live recordings called Bauhaus, which is fun. I'm going to agree with Greg on Antonin Artaud. The repetition at the end is like, I think we talked about something related to this in the Cocteau Twins video. It's anxiety inducing, that song for me in a way. So that is one of the weaker moments on the album, but really that's kind of the only weak moment on this album. Let's get into favorite songs. Honeymoon Croon. Love that song. Number two, Greg, you stated it really well. She's in Parties. I think it's also interesting that Bauhaus, David J. was a fretless bass player, so you get lots of this really slinky sound that a lot of bands didn't have. And this is where my absolute favorite Bauhaus song exists. And I've in conversations with friends over the years, we talk about Bauhaus and they're always like, well, what's your favorite song? And everyone's just like, that song. My 100% favorite Bauhaus song will always be the closing track, Hope. It is such a beauty. And the vocals come in after a while, and it's like they're all singing together. What a swan song, like a closing for their career at this point in time. It's emotional, it's beautiful. Hope. So this is my number two pick, Burning from the Inside. And look at how great that album cover is as well, too. So anyways, all right.
It was cool that you mentioned Bauhaus, because I was going to say, like, the first time I saw Jane's Addiction, late '88, I had no idea that they did that. And I remember going there and I'm like, it started, and I was like, wait a second. No, they can't be playing Bauhaus. And I was so shocked. Had no idea that was, part of their set. So anyway, my number one pick always has been my.
Oh, wait. Oh, we had to
we forgot something.
Let's do our reveal. I think it's all pretty
it
obvious right now, but Greg You surprised me. This was my pick for you in the flat field.
Same. I would have thought
Yeah.
you would have been Flatfield.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where did I put mine? I got, let's see.
Well, we'll wait till we get to each of us.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So my number one pick is, as you probably guessed by now, the band's second album, Mask. And I have a gatefold here with all signed by all four members. So this is always my favorite of their albums. I think this album to me best captures the kaleidoscopic range and drama of Bauhaus. You mentioned something in the very beginning, Brett, about how they kind of got pigeonholed to some extent as like the godfathers of goth and goth band. But I feel like this album really represents the fact that they are truly a post-punk band in the most essential term, use of that term, because their music encompasses so many different things, the funk, the dub, the glam, metal, folk, krautrock, all of that. And I feel like this album really captures that. If you were to just play someone who's not really familiar with goth, this album, they probably wouldn't understand, because it's not what people traditionally would assume is the goth sound. It's really post-punk, and it's so creative. And creativity is the thing I've always admired about them the most. I love the colorful, wild energy of this album. I really love all that funk stuff. I think actually I like Funky Bauhaus the best of all Bauhauses. And the sax, Daniel Ash's sax playing on this album is so great. This album's really like a writhing ball of muscles. It's just so cool. Frank said something about how there's not a weak track, and I'd written notes here. I said, yeah, this is the one album for me where every single song is a 10 out of 10. It was very hard to pick my three favorites. I also like that it shows their more experimental side. You guys mentioned that, like Lilies and Remains, and the title track, which has this real transcendent quality, even though it starts off really scary and then it becomes very moving. I love the artwork too. I think this is probably my favorite of all of their album artworks, especially when you look at the entire thing. It's just really cool. When I was like in college, I had a giant, 4 foot by 4 foot poster of this album cover on my bedroom wall, and always just loved the art. Favorite songs was really hard, because I listened to Frank's picks and I was like, oh yeah, I could have put that on there. I could have put this on there. Like, I could have picked any of these songs, but in the end, I went with number 3, Muscle and Plastic, because it really exemplifies that kind of manic funk energy that I was talking about. For number 2, I'm going to go with the regal sweep of The Passion of Lovers, which was always one of my favorite songs to play on my guitar. I love the guitar on that track. And my very favorite song is Dancing, which has an absolutely astonishing bass line, the nocturnal sax. Peter Murphy sounds absolutely unhinged in the very best way. To me, it's just one of their coolest tracks. So yeah, Mask 1981, my favorite.
Yeah,
Well done.
and I'm kind of having second thoughts about it. You've sold me again. Anyway, go ahead. So it's, I guess, my turn, but you guys.
All right. So
what'd you think for me? Yeah.
I went with The Sky's Gone Out for Frank.
I was wrong too. I thought Mr. 4AD would go with so.
You'd think, right? Yeah, no, and Brett, you were right at one point when I going into this, and I thought that was my number one. Brett, sorry, Greg, you're not wrong either, because that's the 4AD love is strong. But really, it's burning from the inside. My old used copy as well. I do love that the photos of them with from the She's in Parties video, all that stuff. So it's just, I find it to be such a sprawling album, and I love the eclecticism on it. I love how different all of it is. I love hearing them start taking wing, hearing in the beginnings of Love and Rockets, Tones on Tail. I think I mentioned already, but if not, I'll say Tones on Tail is my favorite project that anyone's been involved with. Hearing Daniel Ash kind of find the seeds there, hearing those experimental synthesizer bits and those like kind of funky things that kind of get put into Tones on Tail after that. Yeah, it really hits. Like it's kind of amazing that it came out. The amount of bickering that there was about this record, the amount of Peter being ill at the beginning. It's any testament that it got released at all. But it's yeah, it just feels fresh and exciting too. It's like it was the last one I got of the original 4, so I feel like even though I've heard it a million times, it feels new to me still. So my 3 favorite tracks. This was hard. Well, yeah, it's gonna be Slice of Life. Slice of Life's number 3. I loved hearing Jane's Addiction play it with Daniel Ash on their last tour. It was great to at least get a taste of Bauhaus after the disappointing news of their breakup and not having that East Coast tour. So I got to hear at least one Bauhaus song that year. And it is such a great one, just the way he it just kind of it's his own track, really. It's just a little shuffle with little shaker kind of hitting a like not a cowbell, but like just that little like boom, boom, boom. No, I love it. I love that song. Number 2, this was a hard one to pick either. I had King Volcano on here, but I'm gonna go with She's in Potties. She's in Potties, it's in the can. It's in the can. Anyway, this yeah, that's one of the earliest tracks too, if I remember. They kind of fished that one out from from just demos over the years and finished it up, and that extended bass outro. I agree with you, Greg, is one of the best moments David J has committed to tape. Really fun to play, really fun to noodle on for 8 minutes. I get it. The melodica, everything about it is it's perfect. It's a perfect single. Love the cover of the single artwork with the the woman kind of holding the mask. Really great. And then my first favorite track on here is the title track, Burning from the Inside. They opened with it when I first saw them the first time. It was such an inspired choice. I didn't think that would be it's just such a slow burn. And I love that it could have ended the album. It's been this bleak, weird. Even the chorus is there's no real chorus. It's and it got boom. It's like almost like slapping the bass again. I love everything about that. But the way it goes into Hope is also inspired. So yeah, Burning from the Inside. This was a sleeper choice, but I'm glad it's here. Number 1.
Right on. Well done. All right. What'd you guys come up with for me? Mask, Frank says. Ah, well, it's pretty obvious. My number 1 pick, Mask. Greg, you really did a great job talking about this one. So I wrote this down. The most consistently solid Bauhaus album. So this was their second, as previously mentioned, came out back in 1981. My gatefold, I noticed, Greg, is slightly different than yours.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if mine is a slightly later edition.
Yeah, maybe.
Oh, mine's like Frank's.
Huh.
Cool.
Interesting.
So, great artwork, yeah, for sure. I remember renting the VHS tapes for Shadow of Light in Archive at Tower Records and Video back in the day. The video for Mask, which Frank mentioned, was pretty kind of frightening. Peter Murphy's got this, like, I don't know, it's antlers or something, and David J has there's some like makeup thing going on, prosthetic. I don't remember.
Some real folk horror going on there.
Yeah, but when it hits the outro of Mask with that synth part, it takes this wonderful turn. And David J's distorted bass, it sounds like a semi truck. It's so powerful. And Peter Murphy's just the shadow is cast, and it just turns that kind of moroseness of the bulk of the song for slightly like brighter skies. It's an amazing track. Besides the 2 great singles, The Passion of Lovers and Kick in the Eye, there's just so many wonderful deep cuts on this one. I mean, Hollow Hills, like you talked about, Frank, Muscle and Plastic. I always wait for that wonderful, there's that instrumental bridge that kind of like, I don't know, it just kind of like just gets this like elation, and then Peter comes in with this vocal that's totally out of control. You use the word unhinged, I think, about something, Greg. That was a great description. I know it was relating to something else different. I think this is the Aladdin sane piano-ish thing I was talking about is on this track. I might have mentioned it earlier, but maybe there was another moment. The Man with X-Ray Eyes, like just so many great deep cuts on this one. Number 3 favorite, The Man with X-Ray Eyes. I think that's just such a great song. Number 2, Hollow Hills. And my absolute favorite on this album is the title track, Mask. I mean, that song's kind of just incredible. Yeah. So number 1 for me is Mask.
Awesome.
And awesome. You
So-
really make me regret not having that at number 1. Seriously.
So now we're gonna be tackling our 5 favorite non-album tracks. We'll get to that in a second. Just want to mention too, just once again, that our 3 favorites we're going to compile in playlists, and yeah, let's get started. Number 5, our 5 favorite non-album Bauhaus tracks. We'll start, Greg, with you.
All right, I'm going to go off on a little bit of a deep end on this one. Back in 1985 or so, I was like such a Bauhaus nerd, and I collected everything I could find. And I got, like you guys mentioned, I think the 2 like VHS collections, the main ones. But then there was also another one available back then. There was one called Bauhaus/Chrome, and it was from Target Video.
Target Video. Yeah.
It was a little odd because it had a live concert from Bauhaus from the University of London in 1980, and then it had a couple of promo videos by Chrome, who were also awesome. But I remember watching that and I loving it. And there was a song on there that was like not on any of their albums. And this is, years before there was an internet, or there was no way to look this up. And I just was always puzzled, like, what is this awesome song? This is not anywhere to be found. And then later on, when the Swing the Heartache compilation came out, the song was included, and I was like so thrilled all those years later. So the song I'm picking at number 5 is a track called Poison Pen. It also appeared later on the omnibus edition of the reissue of Mask. It was actually part of the original Mask track listing, and then it got taken off at the last moment. I don't know if that was because it was about a drug addict or something, and maybe they didn't. The lyrics were a little suspect, but whatever it was, I even though Mask is perfect, I kind of wish it was on there because I just always loved this song. I think it's one of David J's, again, one of his best funk bass lines. It's this addictive bass line. It's got these tribal drums. It's just such a funky, wicked track. And I wish it had at least been released on a B-side back then. But yeah, number 5 is Poison Pen.
Cool. Frank, number 5.
Cool. Number 5 for me, this will be the only cover that makes it on my top 5 list. And I'm going to show it as part of the 4AD EP, reclaiming my 4AD status here. And it's going to be Rose Garden Funeral of Swords, originally by John Cale. And I believe it's a John Cale deep cut. I don't think it's like a particularly like lead track for him. It's not on. It's an obscure cut for him. What I think about it is that Bauhaus really kind of improved it. Even the John Cale one is kind of rickety, falls off the rails. Maybe it's because I heard the Bauhaus one first, but it feels like fully realized. It's really an inspired choice, and just they really dub it out a lot more. Live, I think they even double speeded it, so it was even faster and more intense when they played it on their reunion tour in 2006. And yeah, I mean, like I said before, every one of their covers is as good or better than the original. This is my favorite of their covers aside from Third Uncle, and my number 5 pick. And yeah, from the EP and or the Telegram Sam single behind Greg there.
All right, number 5 for me. Boys, the B-side to Bauhaus's first single, Bela Lugosi's Dead, came out back in 1979. Daniel Ash's guitar tone throughout the career of Bauhaus is so interesting, and his tone on Boys is it's great. And you have these jagged chords, and then all of a sudden it does this little rest, and then doo-doo, these 2 little notes. I just think it's just such a quirky little guitar line. So good. And the sound, the timbre, and the inflection that Peter sings that final verse is so exaggerated, and I always look forward to it. And when I saw Bauhaus for the first time back in 1998 on that first reunion tour, It was so cool that they brought that kind of really deep cut into the live shows. It was a total highlight of that show. So for me, my number 5 is Boys.
Right. Okay. Number 4. One of their early singles from 1980, Dark Entries, great cover. I think this is Bauhaus at their most vicious and thunderous. One of you guys mentioned raw power before. I feel like this song could be like it's like some kind of wild mix of raw power and Black Sabbath. It's incredible. It has an iconic descending, ascending guitar riff that with the ringing open strings that like a million post-punk guitarists, myself included, ripped this off afterwards. We all did. And it's just great. The lyrics are astonishingly surreal. It's kind of a perfect song. So yeah, number 4, Dark Entries.
Excellent.
Great choice. Number 4 for me, I don't have a physical copy of it. We've talked about how expensive this one is, $500 or more. It's the 300 pressed final single released for a fan club in 1983. The fan club zine even says, please look for Tones on Tail, because I think they were already together at that point, and they had finally become a full project. Look for that. Anyway, so the track is The Sanity Assassin. I love it so much. I mean, actually, I realized I forgot now. Brett, on that black logo where it sits, I'm sure the track exists on vinyl for a much more affordable price. So I need to get on that because it's such a great track. I love how fast and furious it is. The groove of it, yeah, just it's such like a metal riff too, almost, but just done on. It sounds like it could be like synth or bass, but like either way, it's just a dramatic song. I love it. It's what a way to go out. The B-side, that cover, actually, I will say, is probably their worst cover. But that one single itself, Sanity Assassin, is worth the price of admission alone. So my number 4. There you have it.
Good choice.
Number 4 for me, Frank, you already mentioned it. On the Telegram Sam B-side, one of 2 B-sides on this, it's Rose Garden Funeral of Soars, the John Cale cover, a very like obscure track. I think it's on John Cale's, I think it's called Sabotage Live, I think is where it appears. Really just an interesting song. Another great version is on the Press the Eject. I have it back behind me, which you can't see, the live album. This is one of my earliest memories of Bauhaus is this song, and on those videos that I had rented from Tower Records, and seeing that live show and that performance is incredibly dramatic. And you know, to get a little music theory nerd with this, that bass line is what's quintessentially known as a Bach shape, just based around the root, the octave, the flat 7th, the 5th, and it's just this little, it's used in funk music so much, blues music, and the way it's done in this song just gives it this just slinky, just feel to it, and it's played so perfectly, and it sounds great on the fretless bass. So number 4 for me, the 1980 B-side, Rose Garden Funeral of Soars.
All right. Number 3 for me, actually, I just decided I couldn't leave it off, despite the ubiquity. I'm going to go with their debut single from 1979, the actual song, Bela Lugosi's Dead. Even though we've all heard it a billion times and it's perhaps been overplayed, when I listen to it with fresh ears, or like I train my mind to say, you haven't heard this a billion times, it's just still so astonishing. I still remember the first time I heard it, which was actually 1983, big year. Went to see The Hunger with a few friends from high school, and I had never heard this song. I'd only heard, I think, She's in Parties in Spirit, maybe. And I remember sitting there, and there's that iconic opening scene where they're playing in the club, and that song came on, and yeah, it's still that I still think it holds up. There's not much else I can say about it that hasn't already been said by a million other people. So, the only other thing I'll say is I love dub, so the use of dub technique on this is immaculate. So, but
All right, Frank, you're on mute.
So
Oh,
for
there you go.
me, yes, no, I'm good. For me, this was a later discovery. This was another anomaly in their catalog. Hasn't been collected. It's on a couple compilations. It's on reissues. It's like for me, I don't love their B-sides, but their non-album singles were so good. And so number 3 for me is Lagartija Nick. Crack the whip. It's just another manic track. It's cheeky. It's crazy fun. That rollicking beat that kind of comes down from Valhalla on it and just kind of pummels you. I bet you guys probably remember it as the opening track to that archive video where the old man's like being chased down the street by a bunch of misfits. I think that video came out in the 90s, like because they kept that brand alive for so long. They're like, guys, listen to Bauhaus. Like we were around. You didn't care about us then, but please, we're still, yeah. Anyway, I feel like Lagartija even then is kind of an anomaly and obscurity. Like the B-sides are not so memorable. Paranoia, you know, or yeah. Oh, and the Flat Field Live is the B-side of this one. Cool. But either way, Lagartija Nick is such a strong single. Kind of wish it got more love in their catalog. But I do hear a lot of goth DJs playing it, so that maybe us goths are onto something. Number 3.
Number 3 for me. I'm gonna go back to this one. Crowds.
Nice
The B-side. The B-side to Telegram Sam, also 1980. Such a unique little song. It starts off as this gentle little piano ballad. Peter's perhaps singing about, singing to the audience and their expectations for him as a front person. But I remember the first time hearing it, just being completely caught off guard when he starts swearing in the one verse. And to this day, and the vocals are really upfront and present, and it's a total little gem in the Bauhaus catalog. So for me, number 3 is Crowds.
What a great diss track. You know?
Yeah, great choice. All right. Number 2 for me is 1982 standalone single Spirit. As I mentioned before, I'm not particularly fond of the album version, but I think this song is phenomenal. I think it's probably, along with She's in Parties, the track that got me into the band. It's so elegant and romantic. I think it's their finest pure pop song. Oh, I've got the wrong.
Me and Frank were waiting.
We were dying. I sorry, I didn't want to interrupt your flow there, but I'm like, no.
Those songs are kind of like linked for me memory-wise because they were the first 2 singles I bought. Okay, here we go. Here's the correct one. Spirit. Yeah, this one's the only, like I said, the only arrangement for me is the one on here. I just love the effortless kind of drums that just kind of take you on this little journey. I love the piano. I think they're piano. I can't tell if it's piano or treated guitar, but the little flourishes are just so lovely. It's weirdly for Bauhaus. It's gentle, but I just think it's an amazing track. Again, never grown tired of it. So number 2, Spirit.
Great choice.
We love our audience. Cool. Number 2 for me is Brett's already said so much about it. The B-side to Bella, 1979, Boys, an ode to glam rock, the death of glam rock. Heard here on this track. Obviously, it's such a huge influence for all of them. That Starman, Top of the Pops thing, the Bowie eras, like his transformation in Berlin. Like Bauhaus kind of obviously worshipped their Bowie, and this is, I think, just like a beautiful love song to that era of and it's so you hear so much glam rock, many glam rock riffs in the other Daniel Ash pieces. I think we were all talking about it just sounds like Mark Bolan in some spots, like Prettiest Star guitar licks, like the licks he kind of comes with, the textures. It's such a good. He's such an underrated guitarist in that way. I think I read once he was doing like a Gary Glitter thing during Bella, and that's kind of what he was trying to just like kind of scraping that for. Anyway, Boys being the epitome of their glam rock sound to me, and one of my favorite Bauhaus tracks, number 2.
Number 2 for me, so shockingly, I don't have this single. I've never come across it, but it is on this one and other compilations. Dark Entries. Greg, you already talked about it. Their first single released under the 4AD umbrella there. It's such a pulverizing riff is the only word that I can come up with on that. It is like quintessential Bauhaus. Like if you like the defining sound of Bauhaus, Dark Entries to me, even though they had all these other styles kind of blended in, that song is like quintessential Bauhaus. Dark Entries is my number 2 pick.
Nice. All right, number 1. I'm going to go with a 1980 single, Tear a Couple, Kill Colonel, which, like what you said, I think this is kind of almost the perfect Bauhaus song. It's full of wires and tension and sinister vocals. The guitars are clicking and whirring. The bass is sinuous. The drums sound like rattlesnakes. The lyrics seem like they're pulled out of this like dystopian newsreel. I just love the atmosphere created by this song. It's one of my favorite tracks by them. So yeah, number 1, Tear a Couple, Kill Colonel.
Nice choice.
Great choice. My number 1, because you would feel bad not including it, is Dark Entries. My edition is the weirdly Axis has the 4AD, but it's also somehow repressed by Beggars. So it's the Beggars sleeve here. Maybe third pressing of this. Brett, you just mentioned it. It's quintessential. It's such a pummeling, vital track. For me, it's funny. It's the one time I've ever actually covered Bauhaus. Usually my first band in New York City, this is going to be a bit of a tangent, was called Funeral Crashers. Greg will remember them. We loved our Bauhaus. Our singer sounded a lot like him. It was the most comparative thing, almost to a fault for us. No one can move past the fact that we sounded like Bauhaus, but the shoe fit. And we did love rehearsing, playing So Live by Love and Rockets, playing Dark Entries, playing Double Dare as warm-ups. We love just messing around with this stuff. It was super formative. But one time we ever did cover live, we covered Dark Entries. We were opening up for it at Southpaw for a punk rock and heavy metal karaoke band, which was actually a lot of fun. It's I have a lot of great stories about that scene. But we decided, screw it, we're going to cover Bauhaus. And we did. And it was really fun just to even play those songs, playing the ascending, descending riff on bass. Sometimes playing the lead guitar on the bass, even though I shouldn't have been playing the bass line. Going back and forth on that. It's just such good memories of this track. It's such a vital piece of their history and maybe their most visceral moment. And to me, it just still gets me like I'm 16 all over again. Dark Entries.
Well said.
All right. Number 1 for me, it was really hard to remember the first Bauhaus song that I heard. It was either She's in Parties or this one. And let's go with Ziggy Stardust. We talked about cover songs earlier, and Bauhaus had a way of just taking that song and they took the original Bowie version and just amped it up. It's the music video was great, also included on those old VHS where they're playing in that, I don't know what it is. That's
Sewer,
yeah. It's just and then the third uncle on the B-side. Yeah, recorded for a John Peel BBC session, and it turned out so great they released it as a single. Excellent stuff. Ziggy Stardust, Bauhaus, my number 1 pick.
great, like their biggest single, by the way. I think
Yeah.
it's like the biggest they ever got was that, and they did it as a joke. Also, similarly, like screw it, we're covering this. Fine.
Yeah. And it's so great when you hear that first chord hit. It's just like gets the adrenaline pumping. It's so great, so well done. So thank you all for watching. Leave your lists in the comments, your ranking number 5 to number 1 for your albums. Let us know your 5 favorite non-album tracks. Check out all the links for Frank, Greg, and myself in the description below, and some of our other ranking videos. We will be back soon with a new band to feature in this ranking. So thank you for watching, and we will see you next time. Thanks, Greg and Frank, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you all.